The family sat in a tight, trembling group, all crying and praying that the ordeal would soon be over. Things had happened very quickly. Now they were stuck there until someone gave the green light. But as he brought his children closer, he suddenly noticed that one of them was missing. Amelia hugged Poco, a 10-year-old dachshund. Not many people adopt someone that old, but it seemed like the right thing to do. It was important to them to make their final years pleasant. He would soon realize how important the dog would become to his family. He loved the night. It was the only time his South Belfast home was quiet. The children were sleeping and Poco was snoring softly. He patted her gently again before heading upstairs. However, Amelia had barely pulled the covers up when she heard a noise she had never heard before. It was enough to make him jump. Poco barked, and it wasn't just any bark at a noisy neighbor. The dog went completely insane. In the few weeks they had him in their house, he had always been very quiet. Her heart was racing as she ran down the stairs, picked it up, and turned on all the lights. What had caused such a frenzy? There were no animals outside or people running around. He even made sure all windows and doors were checked just in case. Amelia stood in the center of the silent, dark living room and sighed, panic now replaced by irritation. "Are you going to get mad with age?" he asked. She would soon see how wrong she was. Night after night, Poco howled and barked without warning. The irritation was gone and all he felt was concern. "Please don't let them be rats. Your neighbors have had bug problems for a few months." But there wasn't enough money to pay an inspector. Suddenly, a light bulb went on. He had an idea to find out the truth. The next evening, he set up a camera, hugged Poco, and went upstairs to his room. As the minutes passed, the usual chaos began again. It took all of her strength not to run downstairs to see what was going on. It would have to wait until morning. Then he heard a strange noise. Amelia heard something move above her. Her heart stopped when she heard Poco barking and the noises from the ceiling. She was relieved to think that it must have been a possum or a raccoon that had entered the ceiling boards. That would explain Poco's barking and strange noises perfectly. But I was wrong. It was around 3 in the morning when Amelia was awakened by another noise. This time it was right on her bed. Her heart skipped a beat as she listened to the noises by her bed and the soft thumping of the ceiling. Then she realized with horror that it was definitely not a possum or a raccoon. Amelia's heart was racing, and she felt a horrible metallic taste in her mouth. Everything seemed like an absurd horror movie. A small part of his rational mind told him he might be getting carried away by his fears, but all his senses were screaming at him. This wasn't fiction, this was all happening to real. Amelia was too scared to move, let alone investigate. She did what most people would do, pulled the covers over her head and tried desperately to get back to sleep. The camera footage would reveal what Poco was barking at, but he would have to wait until morning to get the answer. As soon as the sunlight filled her bedroom, she threw on her robe and hurried down the stairs. She picked up the tape recorder and hit play to find out what all the fuss was about. At first, there was nothing, but when the barking started, he caught movement. Something small moved, but after that he disappeared from the picture. The wind picked up and blew a few leaves through an open window. Little ran in circles. She rolled her eyes at her mad dog, Leaves. Amelia was about to stop the video when something else entered the scene. This time it sent shivers down her spine and made her heart drop to her feet. The mother ran upstairs, grabbed her children, and ran next door. She would feel safer in the company of her neighbors. He asked to use the phone, and when he called the police and explained what he had seen, even his neighbors paled. The next question, however, made her cry. "Mom, where's Poco? Oh dear God." She had left him in the house. Sirens wailed as police cars appeared. By this time, she and her children were completely broken and crying. The situation worsened when the children tried to run to save their dog, but she had to hold them back. How could she forget him? An agent removed something from his house. They'd all held their breath. The agents entered the attic, but soon realized something was seriously wrong. A pungent, putrid smell wafted over them, and they saw heaps of garbage strewn all over the floor. All the old coats that Amelia kept upstairs were stacked in the corner of the room by the heater. Then they saw it. There was something on the floor in the corner behind the boxes. He stirred as soon as the agents entered. They all looked completely shocked for a few seconds. Then the man realized that he had been caught. He jumped up, but the officers were quicker. They grabbed him and dragged him out of the house. He was a big man. He fought the cops until he reached the squad car. He was huge and he was angry. The next agent appeared, and this time he brought good news. Old Poco growled and barked at the man, ready to bite into a pulp. Amelia saw the man's face and realized something terrible. The officer brought his dog, and some shocking news too. As the family held their best friend, Amelia listened open-mouthed to the officer. The man was a wanted criminal and had somehow snuck into her attic to hide from the law. There he stayed night after night, sneaking out in search of food and water. But the matter was not over yet. When Amelia saw the man's angry face, she recognized him. But that was definitely not possible. 12 years ago, he'd done a couple of odd jobs in that very house. There was a mutual attraction, and they even dated a few times, but when she found out about his criminal record, they quickly broke up. How long was he in the attic? She felt absolutely disgusted. The police searched the attic and made a startling discovery. Apparently, the man had been living there for weeks. He had put all the old coats and jackets in the heating unit and was sleeping in the heating unit, Tracy explained. Police also found plastic cups the man had used to relieve himself, but then an even more ceiling so he could watch Amelia sleep. She was horrified to realize he had been spying on her for weeks. "It stunned me," she said in an interview. "How can you look at someone through a ventilation shaft?" Worse, no one had any idea how the man had snuck into the attic. The only way in was through a hatch in the hallway between the children's rooms. The man Amelia dated all those years ago had been aggressive towards her when she broke up with him. He wanted a second chance, but Amelia refused, so he stole her truck. Amelia reported him for theft and the police caught him. But he still wouldn't let it go and continued molesting her from prison. Amelia's ex sent letters from prison, protesting that he'd changed and asking her for a second chance. When he was released, she attempted to file a protection order against him. But nobody knew where he was, so the papers weren't delivered. Then she heard a rumor that he had moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. But she found out in the worst possible way where he actually was. Amelia had even gone as far as trying to get a protective order against the man, but even that hadn't stopped him. She wished she had followed her instincts sooner and listened to Poco when he told her something was wrong. "I had an intuition about it, but I ignored it. I pushed it aside. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but I should have trusted my instincts because I was right," she said. Amelia was shocked and appalled. She tightened her grip on Poco and her children as they watched the police drag the man away. She couldn't believe he had been living in her house for weeks. She couldn't stop thinking about what would have happened if Poco hadn't warned her about the intruder night after night. What would have happened? Theft or worse. This could have happened if she hadn't listened to Poco and came up with the camera idea. It was an odd combination of nausea and relief. She looked down at her scruffy boy as he wagged his tail, already getting over the situation. Amelia was sure of one thing. Poco wasn't just any old pooch looking for a loving family to spend the last few years of his life with. As they stood in the shelter, something had nagged at them that he was the one she should take home. Now Amelia understood why. He not only brought joy into her life, he had literally saved hers. At first glance, stalking may seem harmless. The person can call you or send emails and text messages, all perfectly legal. However, this behavior can quickly cross the line into stalking and harassment. If the behavior is common, the contact is unwanted, and you feel uncomfortable or threatened, call the police. Divorced or separated spouses and ex-partners often find themselves being stalked by their ex-partners. If you ever find yourself in such a situation, it is best to call the police as soon as possible. Surround yourself with supportive people and tell everyone what's going on. You should also always have a safety plan in place in case something goes wrong. Disclaimer: in order to protect the privacy of those depicted, some names, locations, and identifiers have been changed and are the product of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual events, locations, or persons living or dead is purely coincidental.